I'm joined by the team at UKRI, and welcome to the session on the impact of derivation accounts. So thank you very much for making the time to join. So the plan for today is I will run through a few sort of background slides just to orientate everyone to the opportunity. We've had quite a lot of questions already submitted, and thank you very much for those. And I'm sure we'll get some more during the session. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can for the actual session today. Those that we don't get to today, we will fill up online and get back to you after the event. But we do our best to get to as many questions as we can, but we've already had a lot of questions, so that's brilliant. So if everyone's okay, I will move on to the slide set. So can you see my slides? That's the question.
Yes, we can see.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you. So the impact derivation accounts is part of a wider investment in translational research. UKRI is just simplifying our translational investments into 4 categories, and impact acceleration accounts and awards are part of that. So this is very much focused on the impact acceleration account opportunity. So what are impact acceleration accounts in terms of the aims and objectives and the scope? So really worth stressing that these are strategic institutional awards for a number of years, and they're there to support impact opportunities in flexible, responsive, and sort of quick, creative ways. The management for the IAs are devolved to the research organisation after the initial checks and ongoing sort of monitoring. But just to re-emphasise, this is very much devolved funding that allows organisations to make decisions about which impact to support. They provide early stage support, and I won't read every slide word for word because a lot of this is already on the website, but these are the aims and objectives for early stage support. And again, as I said, very much flexible and adaptive approaches to exchange and impact, and excuse me, and also to strengthen engagement with users. So in terms of the duration, is for 3 years for each of the awards, and the start date for the awards will be 1st of April, and they have to start on 1st of April 27. The awards are made at 100% FEC costs, full economic costing, and there's various funding limits per council opportunity. So please be aware of the relevant councils that you might be wanting to apply for. In terms of timeline, obviously we have the webinar. We have got the closing date of 15th of September for the applications. Assessment period will run, and then decisions will be notified around the mid-December timeline. And as I said, projects must start on 1st of April. The application process is via the funding service, UKRI funding service, and you can find the information online. I'm sure you've seen that already, so you can find that. But the applications must be made to each relevant council separately through the funding service, TFS. So you obviously will need to register for that if you won't, and obviously your organisation institutions will need to submit those. It's one application per research council per organisation. So if you, as an organisation, research organisation, you want to apply to one council, it's just one application. If as a research organisation you want to apply for more than one council, you have to put in relevant applications. Understanding, of course, that for MRC consortia applications are allowed, and there's some rules around organisational eligibility for consortia applications. In terms of how to apply, I won't go into a lot of detail, but you can access TFS, and then you will go to the funding service and sign in, and then please do check the relevant guidance. So as I said, the application must be by the research organisation and on behalf of the research organisation, and you must be based at a UK research organisation that's eligible for UKRI funding to apply for this. AHRC, MRC and STFC are accepting applications by open competition, and as previously, EPSRC funding is by invitation only. So those organisations that have been invited to apply for EPSRC awards have already been notified accordingly. MRC, as I've just mentioned, do welcome consortia or joint applications as well. So there are some sort of some things just to think about there. In terms of MRC consortia joint applications, the institutions can apply as part of a focused collaborative application for MRC only, able to demonstrate added value of the consortia, and the lead organisation should lead that application process on behalf of the whole consortia. In terms of what the funding will support, as I mentioned, this is flexible institutional level awards and support organisations across a wide range of impact activities. So that's all relevant impact as previously. So that sort of remit hasn't changed in terms of the broad range of impact we would want to see and hope to see through the IAs. For the majority of IA, for the funding will be on impact project activities. It can include staff time, consumables. It can also include other engagement and training activities, and also included as well. Staffing costs to enable IA funding management and coordination can be included, okay, and everything should be costed at 100% FEC under the exceptions cost category. Okay, so, but the change from previous times that this is all being costed 100% FEC, including the staff costs needed to support delivery. What's not supported by IA funding? So this is obviously key. So we don't want to support and double fund impact activities that can be funded and should be funded through standard research grants. Also, the council institutional leads time, including salary costs, would not be funded. Also, the indirect costs or estates are not funded. Key public engagements that's not specific to the IA projects that have been undertaken and supported should not be funded. In case of STFCs, no public engagement costs at all. Undergraduate training, master's or PhD training costs can't be included here. And also IP management, including registering, maintaining property or patent rights, should not be included within the IA grants and activities. Equipment greater than 25,000 cannot be included, and contribution to knowledge transfer partnerships also can't be included. And again, like the public engagement, external events can only be costed if they're directly linked to the IA activities being undertaken. Assessment areas, this is on the website, so I don't plan to go this in detail, but please do have a look at what we're asking for. There is commonality across each of the councils, and that's in looking at vision, approach, use of existing resources, outputs, outcomes, and measures of success, obviously going to be key in terms of getting applications funded, governance and management, and resources and cost justification. So what makes a good application? So in terms of, we really do want to see your vision as a research organisation, whether it's for a single council bid or multiple councils. We want to see the vision for each of those discipline areas. So if you're applying to EPSRC, for example, we want to see your vision for that EPSRC IA. The approach, so obviously we will be looking at the proposed approach and how you're going to deliver the proposed work and how you demonstrate that your approach is appropriate for the work that you're planning and utilises flexible and adaptive approaches, and also some understanding and demonstration of sector appropriateness as well. So thinking about that approach and how you're going to deliver and how you're going to develop the impact culture within the organisation, how the IAs will help support that. Use of existing resources. So I think this is very much thinking about how you propose the IA will build on and develop and maximise high quality research base and outputs and outcomes that within the research organisation, and how it complements and will complement existing impact and knowledge exchange, commercialisation, translation strategies and practices. So it is a forward-looking application, but it will need to be just relevant to what's, how it will build on to existing activity in your area. In terms of the outcomes, so we're really keen to understand what you will think success will look like and what the outcomes and the outputs and the measures of success that you think appropriate for your organisation and for the activities planned. So there's a session for you to tell us about how you feel that you will be measuring outcomes and outputs for the proposed work. And that will be qualitative and quantitative monitoring of outputs and reporting as well. In terms of impact from previous awards, this is particularly relevant to MRC only, okay? And MRC would like to hear about if you've had a previous MRC impact acceleration account, what has happened with that and how you've demonstrated value through that for that award. In terms of governance and management, so we're really interested in how the IA, given this is devolved funding, really interested in how the IA will be governed and managed with the institution. And as I said, that's aimed at individual awards, but if you are planning to hold multiple awards, if you're appropriate, how would you manage that and how will you maximise the value of holding those multiple awards? So please do demonstrate how the organisation will encourage, support and embed impact through these awards. Resources and cost justification. So this is the cost that you will need to deliver the proposed impact acceleration account, okay, and that should cover all the costs of the actual activity plus an appropriate cost for additional sort of administration governance as well. But these will need to be clearly justified, okay, for all staff costs related to the IA. So please do justify those really, really carefully. The assessment process. So EPSRC, there'll be an expert assurance panel, and so that's based on invitation only for EPSRC. So the panel will look at the applications that are provided on invitation basis and decide on appropriateness, value for money, and the criteria that we talked about. For AHRC, MRC, and SCFC, expert panels will assess each application against the assessment criteria. So I know that there's been lots of contact already between the councils and the community. So this event is meant to be just a sort of an addition to that. We will answer the questions, and here are the contact details also directly if you want to approach one of the particular councils as well. So thank you. I will stop sharing there. And we can just bring the room back, and then we will move into sort of question and answer mode, if that's okay. So I think I'm handing over to Nishta, first of all, to help choreograph, and bear with us. Obviously, we've got a lot of questions coming in and a lot of questions, so please do bear with us. But Nishta, am I passing over to you to start the Q&A session? So thank you.
Yeah. Just to start by saying that we are recording the webinar and we will share the recording and the slides, and we will try to answer as many questions as we can, but we will share like a summary of FAQs after the webinar. We have received a lot of questions pre-submitted as well, so we will start with those and then we will take a couple of questions which are in the room. To start with, Tony, can I just come to you? And is there a view on institutional IAAs combining as like a cross institution to deliver joint IAA projects?
Thank you, Nishta. So, I mean, I think yes. I mean, what we would like to see, and what's been demonstrated from the first round, is that organisations that really managed to sort of demonstrate and really grip the opportunities of working across disciplines and across sectors can produce some really interesting, some really exciting work. So we are keen to see that if people have opportunities and applying for more than one institutional award.
Thank you for that. Coming on to you, Paris, it's an AHR. Sorry, Claire, did you want to add something?
I mean, just to kind of add to what Tony said, I think, initially, and this will come up through some of the other questions, application and assessment in the first instance will be at the council level. We absolutely want you to think about at that early stage where there may be those opportunities for strategic alignment should you be successful in obtaining multiple IAAs. But of course, recognise that, at that stage, you won't be able to commit to a firm plan because you won't know what funding you will win and not. So I think, we recognise that is an ongoing goal that we will expect you to look at where those opportunities and alignment is really beneficial when funding decisions have been made by each of the councils.
Thank you for that. Coming on to Paris, it's an AHRC IAA question. Is it important that the application demonstrates continuity from the previous application?
Thanks, Nishta. So continuity from your previous IAA, if you've held one, is not a requirement. However, if your institution has held an IAA previously, it might be helpful to reflect on sort of learning, achievements, approaches that have informed it will help to inform your application. And the main focus really should be clearly addressing the assessment criteria. And I think that's across all councils. So really look at those assessment criteria and look to answer those in your application. Assessors will evaluate the application presented rather than looking for continuity for its own sake.
Thank you for that. I think there is a similar question across all IAs. If they're applying for the second time, should they be prioritizing new type of activities or building on what has worked before? I think the answer that Paris just gave applies to similarly all IAs. Look at the assessment criteria, and the awards are intended to add value to your existing funding that you might have, to existing research base that you might have, and also to take advantage of the new opportunities that might arise out of your organization's research base. And yeah, should we move on to that? We have got some MRC specific questions as well. I think continuing on about so outcomes from previous projects, should they also include from conference and concept scheme as well as the IAAs? Catherine.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll try and answer a couple of questions I've seen come in one answer here. So this is an MRC specific question. I will just emphasize that again. And this is really about outcomes and impact. So if you've had IAA funding before or equivalent funding, essentially, what have you done with it? How have you generated impact? And how are you building capabilities in areas of strategic importance? I just want to reassure you that there is no advantage or disadvantage to if you have had previous IAA funding. And that's why we've given informational guidance for both different scenarios. But what I'd encourage you to think about here is, what have you done in this space? How has it added value? And how does this reassure on what you've said you're going to do? So think about putting forward a wide range of examples that show you can feasibly deliver lots of different impact activities, highlight how these have added value or they could add value to a strategy, how it's accelerated impact, and how this demonstrates readiness to accelerate impact in future strategic areas of opportunity or maximize opportunities that exist or things that you've not tapped into at the moment. So think about the most compelling cases that you have that can demonstrate different types of impact. And if confidence in concept is a really good example of this, just think about the timeliness of what you're putting forward. So you'll really want to articulate why you've used this as an example, what value it adds, how it positions you to generate impact, and how it demonstrates that readiness for future impact if you are successful in this funding opportunity.
Thank you. And there's one more MRC question around joint applications. Can teams from multiple applications apply in a joint partnership model? You might want to expand on that as well, Catherine, please.
Yes. So we do still welcome applications coming in from consortia or groups of institutions where it's appropriate and where it's justifiable. So in these examples, we would encourage you to get in touch with the team. So I think there'll be an email address that goes out with the call, or you can email me directly, and we can just talk about this in a bit more detail on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So we have got a few questions around costs, and can they ask further clarity on the level of detail required around resources and cost and justification? Catherine, did you want to answer that as well?
Yes, I can do that. So assessors aren't looking for a line-by-line breakdown of all the resources that you're requesting, but you should really clearly articulate what you're going to do, how much it costs, and why the cost you're asking for is critical to delivering your IAA. And you need to think about the cost that you're applying for and make sure that they're appropriate and critical for delivering what you've said you're going to do, and that they're proportionate for the size of the award you're applying for. And there is some information in the guidance about IAA delivery staff, and you should clearly justify why you're asking for these funds. And these are costs that enable the IAA funding management and coordination. So we've got a little bit more guidance in the funding finder document. So I just encourage you to read that text in the cost justification section.
Thank you. Paris, there's a question around the AHRC IAA clusters. May I ask, are the AHRC IAA clusters likely to continue with the cluster system?
Yeah, of course. So we have received an amazing amount of really positive feedback on the cluster model that we inherited or stole from our ESLC colleagues and sort of adapted for arts and humanities. We are looking through all of that feedback through our reporting. That is something that we are looking to do for the next round of IAAs, but we want to take all of the feedback away. We're open to receiving more, so if the current cohort do have any feedback that they would like to share with us, our inbox is open, please do contact us. And then we will have some form of cluster model. It may look slightly different 5 years on from the first round, and that will be based on the feedback that we've received. So if you do have anything, please do reach out to us.
Thank you for that. We have got a few questions about seeing how IAA fits within the UKRI translation framework that we have. So the questions are around, could the panel comment on extent to which IAAs are expected to support missions, IS8 as well as impact, and how IAA is embedded within the overall translation infrastructure? Claire, can I come to you first? And then maybe Tony would like to add something?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Nisha. So, ultimately, given the nature of IAAs, what we've kind of said here in this funding opportunity is that, IAAs, in terms of their strategic focus and emphasis within institutions and the plans that you put together, is absolutely down to the institutions to work out, a plan to design kind of an approach so that activities will suit you best in terms of your institutional strategy and opportunities. They're open right across the relevant councils and across our remit, rather than specifically asking you to focus on either of those priority areas, whether it's the IS8, etc. We're not asking you to specifically focus on that at this stage. We do, of course, expect, institutions that win the awards to look at plans and look at their priorities throughout the lifetime of the award. As UKRI's plans around IS8 areas, for example, emerge, fully expecting there to be different opportunities in the translational space, and therefore how you might choose to use your IAA in that context to change over time. So it's absolutely about having the right governance and kind of management structures to be able to guide you as this kind of wider context is evolving. Tony, did you want to add something?
No, I think that answers the question really well about the ISA, just in terms of how it fits into the translational sort of architecture that we have. So we, first of all, it's worth saying that we see impact acceleration accounts as a really crucial part of the overall investment in this area, and hence the commitment from across the councils in this area. So we sort of see this as a really important investment. We know that previously they produced really good outcomes and impact, so we're really keen on that. In terms of where they fit, so I think we know that, first of all, there is a bit of an overlap, and we don't see that as being a bad thing. So we think there will be some overlap between other activities in the translational infrastructure. So we know, for example, that impact acceleration accounts support early proof of concept funding, for example, on individual projects, and we want to see that continue. We don't want this to be sort of siloed. So we absolutely understand that, as well as other impacts. And likewise linked to the sort of supporting collaborations, etc., that you might see under some of the other ones, such as prosperity partnerships. But so we see the impact acceleration accounts as being part of that early translational space. But ultimately, again, it is up to the organisations to use the funding as they see fit. And it's worth just saying that they will potentially, well, we know that there will be other impact acceleration investment opportunities coming down the line. So one example, of course, Catherine Mark talked to is medical research councils, MR's impact acceleration awards, which is specific awards rather than delegated funding. We might see that in future ISA areas. So just to emphasise, as Claire said, it's completely open. We're not focusing on this just on IS8, but you will see further impact acceleration awards funding in the future.
Thank you for that. Talking some more about the costs. The questions are around, can you share what percentage of budget can be allotted to management of each of IA? And can you please clarify the costs around the institutional council lead as this project leads for the IAs? Claire, can I come to you?
Basically, yes, of course. There isn't a percentage cap on what you are allowed to support in terms of the delivery and management staff as part of the IAA programme delivery. But absolutely want that to be made, that case to be made of what is absolutely essential for you to deliver this award. We're not expecting that lack of kind of cap, as it were, that we used to have to mean that becomes really overinflated, as it were. This is about really what is going to, what is needed, and justifying that as part of your bid to the different councils. I think we have had some questions around whether we allow staff time because of the relationship to what we've got as the project lead and the co-lead. Those are the particular roles, and that is, let's be clear here, that those are the roles that are about the kind of strategic oversight of the award. We're not saying that you can't, when awards are funded and when you've got kind of projects that emerge from IAA mechanisms and activities, that they can't be including the right kind of people resources on them to deliver the project. We are specifically talking about there, and when we talk about no costs associated with project co-lead, project lead and co-lead, those are the kind of roles, the oversight roles, that we are not expecting to attract specific costs under the IAA. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing with the cost theme, Catherine, there's a question around TNS. So are the TNS costs for attendance, which brings the non-HIE organizations and academy together, be eligible, workshops or conferences? And,
yes.
And if the impact engagement activities are covered by the funding?
Yeah, so this is, I think Tony mentioned this in his presentation slide. So you can request travel and subsistence for external events, but this is where they're clearly linked to delivery of an IAA project or for the impact of IAA funded projects. So there has to be that clear link and it has to be justified. But yes, in theory, yes.
Thank you. Paris, there's a question around if there's an indication of number of awards AHRC and even STFC, so Andy, you might want to come in, would be able to fund. Paris?
Sorry, bear with me. Let me find that one. So yeah, we're unable to kind of state right now how many. I'm speaking for HRC and STFC and MLC colleagues, please jump in if need be. How many we're expected to fund right now. When we are at panel, our panel will be looking at the quality of applications, and that's how that funding line will be drawn. There is sort of no set amount of awards that we will be funding by the council. So we do encourage that applicants are focusing on the strongest possible application that they can submit to all councils. Thank you.
Just as an add-on for STFC, we are hoping that we will fund more than we did last time, but as Paris said, we can't give you an exact number at the moment.
There's another question, Andy, on STFC IAs. Are there any sectors that are favoured for a particular activity?
Thanks, Nish. So no, there are no activities that are favoured over another. That is not going to be part of the assessment. We just would expect the institutions to deliver depending on their institutional strategies and their strengths.
Thank you. We have got a question around project partners or like their contribution. A number of project partners are interested in supporting our IA application. Do we or do they need to provide any letters of support as evidence? Paris, are you able to pick that up?
It's great that you've got lots of potential partners interested, and we aren't expecting letters of support. I don't believe there is any space to add those on TFS, and all information should be within the application form itself.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions around the assessment process or the assessment criteria kind of thing. So will there be any crossover in the assessment between the research councils? And if you can expand on the metrics that are utilized to measure impact during the assessment process. Claire, would you be able to answer the first part? Maybe Paris might want to jump in from the room as well.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Nisha. I mean, I think we partially covered the bit about kind of the assessment and process and how we will look at that initially, in that, you know, each submitted application will be first assessed at the council level, and that's where decisions will be kind of reached as to what IAAs will be funded. You know, we will obviously be kind of sharing the outcomes of those with each other, and, you know, in the longer term, looking to kind of share learning and approaches where appropriate. I think absolutely it's being clear that applications should ensure that it's tailored to kind of requirements and the objectives of the council that you're submitting to. What was the second question that we were asking, Paris?
It was around, are there any metrics that are utilized to measure the impact during the assessment process?
So no, there's no single set of metrics to measure impact within the assessment process. The assessors will consider all the information that is provided and then using that against the published assessment criteria within the funding finder document, including sort of strength of the proposed approach to supporting and enabling impact, the suitability of processes and support mechanisms, and how the institution, the research organisation, will identify, develop and manage impact opportunities. So again, going back to sort of Claire's point and all of our points really is really ensuring that when you're putting together your application, you're really focusing on the assessment criteria that's within the funding finder opportunity.
Thank you for that. There's a question, there are a couple of questions around institutional contribution. Though the funding opportunity is funded 100%, is there an advantage to have institutional contribution? And what is the expectations around in-kind contribution from the university, or is there any guidance on around that? Catherine?
Yes, so there's no expectation for institutional contribution. As we've talked a bit about during this webinar, the IAA should add value to an existing research base and add capabilities to an institution's strategy. If there is, and I think there's a question there somewhere that's about if there's examples of an in-kind contribution from an institution. If you have examples of those, that might be a way to articulate the added value that IAA funding can help build on an existing capability or address any untapped potential areas for impact. So no, the requirement is not there, but if there is something that you wish to articulate, I think you need to consider it on the broader scale of what IAA funding should be delivering and how it contributes to impact in line with the institution's strategy.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So I think it's specific to MRC. I think it's similar answer that you gave, but is the expectation to split the spend between proof of concept projects or industry projects, or I think it's a question to MRC, but it might apply to all of them. Catherine, did you want to?
Yeah, I can just clarify and expand. Again, I'll try and group together a few questions here. So the majority of the cost should be for impact projects. And so for MRC, this will be in line with MRC remit. So very broadly, this is to accelerate the transition from discovery research to translational development. Other engagement activities can be supported. So this includes knowledge exchange. For MRC only, this is capped at 15%, and the other councils don't have this cap, but MRC do. So again, in the funding finder document, just make sure you're reading the information that we pop in there. But hopefully that answers a few of the questions.
So there's a question around sort of specialization or the size of the institution. So given some of the institutions are very small, what is the expected volume of impacts? And are you looking for application to specialize and focus thematically according to their existing research and expertise? Paris, Claire, did you want to take that in the room?
I mean, I'm quite happy to start with that, Nisha, and I think it also relates and builds on something that Tony's already said, because we've been asked some questions about what our expectations are about how the IAA is embedded in overall, translational infrastructure within an institution as well. And I think the aim here is for a plan for an impact acceleration account to be tailored to the local opportunities. Yeah, it's about, yes, addressing the UKRI strategic aims, goals for IAAs, some of which are really about, this is an opportunity for you to think specifically in the context of your research portfolio. What mechanisms, approaches are really going to add value and support the translation of those research outputs into impact? So there's a choice there to be made, I think, if an institution recognizing that there's a particular opportunity based on their portfolio to have some focus or emphasis. So I think it really, but it also fits with what other funding you may have and that you might be utilising this alongside. So there isn't a one size fits all. We want you to put together a plan and design an approach for your IAA that absolutely is going to work in your local context, drawing on your strategies, opportunities, and indeed setting it in the context of what other funding you have in this space and why this particular funding opportunity kind of adds value and provides further benefits in that particular context.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Anything to add?
No, I think I covered that. Thank you, Shda.
Yeah. So we can take some of the questions which are in the Q&A box as well. Does it's a bit early, but does any of the panelist member have any idea who will be assessing the IA application, how the panels are made up?
I mean, I think the answer is the same for all of us in a very broad sense, and we've put that in the funding opportunity, that it will be made up, that each of the panels will be made up of a mixture of those in the academic community, in the business community, user communities, looking for a balance there across, you know, given that this is about research impact across those different communities. I don't think any of us are in a position, or would at this stage, to be honest, tell you exactly who's on that panel. Ultimately, we'll be looking to kind of, you know, manage conflicts, recognising that there will be a lot, but also that we've got slightly different processes, certainly in terms of EPSLC. Ours is an assurance process, whereas all of the councils are kind of have a competitive process where they were looking to kind of get some information from their panel on priorities for funding.
Thank you. Thank you for that. There are a couple of questions around the KPIs and how they clarify. Sorry. I think, is there any other question? I'm having a look.
Should I take the question around commercialisation and venture creation?
Yes, please.
That one. So I just linked to. So first of all, just to emphasise that the IAs will support all routes to impact, so potentially all eligible. So I think wanted just to stress that. Given the question, yes, it's absolutely okay and appropriate for the IAs to be used for early commercialization activities. So proof of concept, for example, can be used for early proof of concept and other activities that will help that commercialization journey. So it's not just knowledge exchange activities, it can be commercialization. But as I said, all routes of impact relevant to the disciplines.
Thank you for that. There are a couple of more questions around the staffing costs, especially the staffing costs around management coordination. And is there an expectation to do so? And would there be a disadvantage for not doing so? Can I come to you, Catherine, for that one?
You can. This just comes down to what you're going to do. And we've said that the majority of costs should go towards the IA project costs, but we are also aware that you need to deliver this program, you need to manage this program. So it's not up to us to say, that you should or shouldn't do this, but if you need to ask for what you need that's in line with what you want to do, what you're coming forward and saying, this is the IAA, this is the strategy, you need to show that that's deliverable within your budgetary envelope, within the team that you have, within the staff members that you have. So this is on a case-by-case basis, but you will need to clearly articulate, if you are requesting costs, you need to clearly articulate what you're asking for and why it's critical to delivering what you said you're going to deliver. But as part of that, it's why this is the most exciting thing that you're going to do. And this is really important to underpin the really exciting things that you're going to do with this funding.
Yeah. In some of the application sections, it mentions that further details are in the funding service. And because there's only one person who can submit the application, is there any way to access that information, or do you expect all the information to be contained within the funding finder document? Is that something that you'll be able to?
I can take that one, Nisha. Thank you. So the applications were set out so you do have specific people for your PL and co-L, project lead and co-project lead. There should be a way that you are then able to have sort of like administrative people that are then able to support that. If that's not the case, please do contact the TFS Help Desk email address. They will be able to advise. You don't have to be a person named on it to be able to contact that email address. So anyone's able to access that information through the email address. If you are struggling, please do contact your council mailboxes. Apologies if you can hear what's going on outside our window. Yeah, so please do reach out. But in the first instance, do contact the help desk and they should be able to help you. But yes, all information should be within the funding finder document as well.
Fine. Thank you for that. And there is a question. I will just pick it up because is it open for the applicants or the projects undertaking research on a part-time basis? Do you want to just talk? Does anyone want to?
I don't think I fully understand that question, Nisha. So if it's possible, can we follow up with that person directly just to get a little bit more information? Thank you. Apologies to whoever submitted that one, but we will follow up.
But just to say, it's a devolved funding to your research organization, so you might want to contact your research office and work with them.
I mean, ultimately, you know, we would expect, I think it's fair to say, in all cases, IAAs to be managed in a way that is really considering and, you know, inclusive. So, you know, the equality, diversity, inclusion aspects, we would, as a devolved funding, we would absolutely want you to be kind of making the funding available in those ways. So there's no restriction in terms of what kind of, as long as you have employees of your research organisation, they can apply for IAA funding. Doesn't matter if they work part-time. We can't see the question, but if that's what the question is, that I'd like to kind of get that point across.
Yeah, thank you.
Very flexible.
Yeah. There's a question around institution location. Will that play a part in the panel decisions? Can I just, Andy or Catherine, do you want to answer? Yeah.
Andy, were you about to jump in then?
I was going to say, can you repeat that question, please?
Will the institution location play any part in the panel decisions?
For STFC, no. The balanced portfolio we talk about is more about making sure we've got a balance across our whole science base rather than location.
And I can just add, there's no demand management on this call. We've got a section at the end of the funding finder document for each of the councils about the assessment process, which I think might answer a few of the questions that we've been asked in the webinar today. If people find it helpful to go away and read some of those bits.
Can I just jump in? I just noticed there's a few questions on around project lead and project co-lead and who can be on that. There's a few questions in the chat. Can I just ask anyone would like to comment on just clarifying what our expectations are around the project lead and what the co-lead role might be? There's a few questions in the chat on that. Sorry, Nish, just do your job there. Anyone would like to comment on that? Claire or
Catherine?
So if you look at the section on, I'm just trying to see where we are at the top there, which section there, but there is a whole section dedicated to it. Forgive me, I can't work them. Yeah, sorry. There is a whole section, both in terms of who we would expect the kind of project lead to be. So we expect that to be an academic or strategic lead for an IA application who has senior oversight and responsibility for the relevant council or discipline portfolio. For example, Dean of Research or Innovation, Head of Department, a very senior role, not somebody who's going to be necessarily applying for the money themselves. It's about kind of is strategically placed in the organisation to be able to guide provide the strategic intent for the activities and kind of support really good decision making in a, you know, well-aligned governance and management section. The project co-lead, we are asking for the same person to be identified and named for a project co-lead across any different council applications that you will be making to the different councils. So, you know, ultimately that person will then should have oversight of all of the IAAs that you may receive as part of your applications to us. And I think just recognising, and I don't know what stage these questions came in, it is those individuals that we are not expecting to draw on costs for the IAAs. Absolutely, when you're at the stage of having an IAA and you are funding projects to support impact, those people who are putting projects and delivering projects should absolutely be able to include time or buy out time at that level. So there's a difference when we're talking about IAA projects that are supported by the impact acceleration accounts versus those that will have a senior level role at having oversight of the IAA award. And that's where the differentiation we're expecting in terms of where you can apply for costs or not. I hope that's clearer.
Any further questions, Nishta, you want to pick up on?
Sorry?
Any further questions, Nishta?
Yes.
That you'd like to
Sorry,
pick up?
I was on mute. There's a question in governance and management around KPIs, that if you're expecting some target numbers to be included in the application as well.
Can I come in on that, Nisha? Very happy to. Because obviously as UKRI, those of you that have current awards with us know that we have our own kind of metrics that we collect information at a scheme level as UKRI, and they're the same across all kind of councils, and we collect that information, and that's a way of us kind of really capturing some evidence of the value of what IAAs deliver for us as an organisation. I think absolutely something that we would really keen to stress, because you would be actually submitting a vision and a plan specific to your organisation. We would want you to have your own KPIs to be measuring the success of your specific vision and plan, and including some targets on that is really helpful for you yourselves and for us to see what you're aiming for in terms of the delivery. So I would say, yes, we would really encourage you to be developing your own KPIs in addition to the information and evidence that we will be collecting at a scheme level.
That's okay. There's a question around trusted research. So what concretely should be included in the application, considering we are making sub-awards internally, so we could fund anything within the range of sectors? I think what we expect are there are some assurances in place that you will comply with our terms and conditions, especially around our trusted research and innovation conditions. And we do have some more guidance on our UKRI web pages. So basically that is Claire.
I can add to that, Nisha, because I know that the application format is currently set up where you will be asked to provide an answer to that. And we fully recognise that because this is devolved funding, you won't be in a position to appropriately assess all of the kind of risks or relationships at this stage. So as the questions come up, we fully, and this is included in the funding opportunity as well, we recognise that you will in some sections need to put either not applicable or to be picked up when actual projects are funded. So just to be clear on that.
Thank you. Tony, are you happy to just wrap this up now?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us online. Great turnout. Hope this has been helpful obviously we remain open for questions to individual councils or to us, and as I say, we will try to get round to all the questions that we haven't managed to answer following, and as Nisha said, that we had also recording this video and we make this recording available as well, so you can re-watch it, pass it on to colleagues. So thank you. So thank you to Nisha for managing the questions. Obviously difficult to manage all the live questions, so thank you, Nisha, did a great job. Thank you to the rest of the team from the councils for answering the questions. But again, thank you to everyone who's joined. Hope it was helpful, and good luck with your applications. So I think we're closed now. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.